of us started sewing for our dolls. Our dolls are our make-believe children, and sewing doll clothes gives us an opportunity to try new techniques in a small space. If you're not a doll collector, you might want to make small samples of your favorite techniques and place them in a sewing journal. One technique that we're going to learn today is recorded, now not like the music, but recorded scallops, which will be shared by Margaret Tully. You will love having a sewing sample notebook as you travel on your sewing journey. There are many techniques to learn. Let's get started, and thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today. You are going to love this elegant christening dress, made with a beautiful handkerchief linen and machine embroidery and silk ribbon run through the eyelets or the ribbon slots. The dress is beautiful with its very simple neckline, straight sleeves, and this is machine embroidery, and the beautiful little shamrocks in between, machine embroidered buttonholes, more pretty little things. And by the way, this is an antique embroidery. Look at this skirt. How beautiful, with the machine embroidery shaped in the form of a heart. And after you get the baby's birth date or even the initials of the baby, you could also put the initials in the middle of the heart. More beautiful antique machine embroidery designs. And then on the skirt, how beautiful. The beading or the ribbon slot has been done by machine, I might add, in the hoop, going all the way around the skirt. Now the technique today, this is so beautiful. Do you look at this beautiful, beautiful scallop skirt? Well, that's a wide scallop. It's very, very pretty, and there's a little secret to it. It is recorded, and as I said, it's not like music, recorded scallops on this elegant christening dress. Let's just see how those are done. Take your fabric, which this happens to be a beautiful piece of linen, and a tearaway stabilizer underneath the fabric. The next step is to stitch your scallops, whatever width scallop you want, right through the fabric and through the stabilizer, leaving plenty of fabric down here below and stabilizer. Now cut away, don't tear away. Cut away both the stabilizer and the fabric, being very careful not to cut it right up to the stitching line, but leaving, that's probably a 1/16 of an inch exposed. Now where does that recording come in? Okay, you're going to take your cord and you're going to butt it up right against, you don't have to put it on top of it, just butt it up right against that finished edge like this. Now I've done this time with red so you can see it. Then do a zigzag that does not go all the way to the top of the original scallop, but only goes partially. I zigzag on and off, attaching that cording. And then here is a sample to show you. That was done in red and pink, which you wouldn't do. This is a sample to show you how pretty it is done with the same color thread, pink and pink. Here to share this wonderful technique with you today is my friend Margaret Tully. Margaret is an educational consultant for Baby Lock. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's always wonderful to be with you.
Beautiful christening dress with that recorded scallops. I love the name recorded.
Oh, thank you.
Show us how to do it.
All right. We're going to start, of course, like Martha said, with just a piece of fabric and then some sturdy tearaway stabilizer. Select the stitch, the scallop stitch. You'll want to use needle thread and bobbin thread that matches. And here we've stitched through the cloth and the stabilizer. And like Martha explained, you want to tear or cut through the excess fabric on the unused portion of your fabric and leave just a little bit of the fabric edge. If you get too close to the stitching, you'll have scalloped eyelashes instead of a satin stitch.
Well, that isn't what we want.
Now then, when we record, we're going to select a standard zigzag stitch. The default setting for your machine is actually wider than what you need, but we're going to keep that width, and we're going to make the stitch length very short. The thickness of the thread is going to determine the stitch length. Since we're using a thin or an embroidery weight thread this time. It's a very short stitch length. I have mine set on 0.4. So with the wide zigzag, the left swing of the stitch is going into the satin stitch scallop. The right swing is going across the cord and off into air. So we'll just add this.
And you're just holding that.
Exactly.
Okay.
When we get to the pivot point, this is interesting with cord. Typically with a satin stitch or an applique stitch, we've always been told to stop for the pivot with the needle in the outside of the turn. This is a little different when you're using a cording. We're going to stop with the needle in the inside of the turn. And the reason we do this, if you'll notice, Martha, is that when we pivot, the cord actually has the needle to wrap around and stabilize it. You see?
Oh, okay. Oh, what a trick.
And then you can just
let's
continue
do that one
on
again.
around.
I want to see that scallop again. I mean,
All
that
right.
turn again, Margaret. That's fascinating.
Okay. And if you don't mind, I'll just take this opportunity to tell folks, if you happen to have a knee lift for your sewing machine, this is the perfect place to store or to place your gimp cord or whatever other source you have on that knee lift, and it keeps it flowing freely into the stitch. When you get to the pivot point, stop with the needle in the inside of the turn, pivot the cloth, and snug that cord right around the needle. Lower the presser foot and continue. And this is how we get this beautiful recorded edge, as was seen on the christening dress.
Perfectly
Yes,
finished,
it
and
is.
didn't have to put any seam sealing or anything like that on it.
That's true.
It's completely finished.
The next step then would be to come to the back and just simply tear away that tearaway stabilizer.
And that elegant christening dress. Margaret, I also want to show our viewers this fabulous bonnet that we have here. It's just elegant, Margaret. Let me turn around to let them see the back of the bonnet, the little back crown of the bonnet, which has a little circle with the beautiful antique embroidery. It has the wing needle entredeux, and the band of the bonnet has this wonderful, the antique machine embroidery that has a silk ribbon run through. That's just beautiful.
Thank you.
And now Margaret has some sewing inspirations for you. Margaret, this is so adorable. Tell us about this little doll's dress.
This little doll's dress is serger crochet, and the doll forms are available at so many of the hobby stores. And they come with instructions for hand crochet.
And this is over a little room
deodorizer.
This is so cute. So she sits there, and that was every bit made on a serger.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it.
Took about 18 minutes for the entire outfit.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And the hobby stores is where you pick up that little doll. This little bonnet now is absolutely elegant.
Thank you.
Look at this. All done with the wonderful wing needle work and the beautiful French lace with a wing needle entredeux. Absolutely elegant. Now, Margaret, I just thought this was adorable too.
Well, now this is too much fun.
Too much fun. Well, let's have too much fun.
Too easy.
Let me show them.
This is a purchased
bag.
tote bag.
Okay. Okay.
Now I took and cut 6 donuts, measured the outside circumference of the purchased bag.
Circle here.
Cut 6 donuts of fabric, and 2 at a time put the fabric's wrong sides together, and then at the serger trim the outside edge. The inside edge is simply just sewn onto, with a sewing machine,
raw edge,
sewn onto the
how cute,
onto the purse.
And Margaret, I love this sweater. Once again, I think this is the serger. Now this is a purchased sweater.
Actually, I made the serger. This is purchased fabric.
Purchased fabric. Oh, you made the sweater. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. You made the sweater, and then
And
that
serger.
wonderful serger crochet again.
Crochet.
Wonderful. This little dress is so pretty and elegant. Now tell us about the shadow work.
This is serger shadow work.
Serger shadow work.
bet.
Oh, and then the machine embroidery.
and
How
the windows.
elegant and sweet. And you know, Margaret, I've just about had a fit over this little suit.
Oh, good.
A little button on the shoulder, white piqué suit. with simply a monogram in the middle. I think I have to have one of these for my 3 little grandsons.
Well,
I have
of
3
course.
that are young enough to wear this. I think I have to have.
And you know, Martha, the John suit pattern came from your applique
All
book.
right. Well, Margaret, that's been one of my favorite patterns. And John, remember John Kennedy used to
Yes.
wear these, which is where we got the name John.
Yes.
And now, Margaret, I understand you have a so quick, so easy project for us.
I do.
Margaret, those pincushions are so beautiful. It's hard for me to believe they're really easy to make.
But they really are,
Okay.
Martha. I'll be glad to show you how. Pincushions are just such a beautiful decorative addition to any of your rooms, your bedrooms, guest rooms, the baby room. We're going to talk about how you can use pincushions as a wonderful canvas for displaying some of your practice work. If you ever wanted to try perhaps some shaped puffing or embroidery, some wing needle work. But today, Martha, I want to show you how we're going to make this pincushion in the embroidery hoop entirely.
And I love the fact that you've used that to put your beauty pins on. What a beautiful gift for a baby.
Oh, aren't they sweet?
Uh-huh.
And if we had some of those old-fashioned hat pins, that would be wonderful.
Hat pins are fun too, aren't they?
Okay, we're going to start with our pincushion top fabric, the batting, and the backing for the pincushion. We'll actually put into the embroidery hoop the pincushion top and float in under the hoop the batting. We don't need any other stabilizer. The next, oh, I'm so sorry. I got ahead of myself here. I almost skipped a step. In your embroidery machines, you have a frame selection. Those are different sizes and shapes, geometric shapes. I've chosen the circle, and we've just stitched one single running stitch for that size and shape of circle. Now then, I've selected from that frame menu again a smaller frame stitch, this time with decorative techniques. We have a change of color, we have a green vine and some little pink flowers or leaves, and also you can use some of your text or your fonts that are included in your embroidery machine. Keep in mind, we still have the pincushion top in the embroidery hoop. The only stabilizer is the piece of batting. The next step, as you see, the top of the pincushion is finished. The next and final step would be to float in the pincushion back fabric, float it in on top of the hoop. And now we're going to select that original frame size and shape and stitch through this time the pillow back. And can you see that I've stopped just a couple of inches short of completing the circle? This is how we're going to have enough space to turn the pincushion and then fill it with some fiber. Close the opening with a hand sewing needle.
How fast and easy would that be? And wouldn't that be fun for teacher presents, for Sunday school teacher presents, for, just all kinds of gifts, showers,
Yes.
bridesmaids? I think we're just going to have to make pincushions.
Oh, good.
Margaret, thank you so much. And next I have a wonderful doll dressing technique for you. My baby doll, Sophie Reese, has the most wonderful christening dress, absolutely beautiful. It'll be just as pretty for a real baby as it is for my play with baby. As you see, she's now sucking her thumb. She might be a little scared of being on television, but she's very happy to be here. What we're going to talk about today is the sleeve. The sleeve is gathered. It has at the bottom or the cuff of the sleeve, it has entredeux, beading, which is a French lace that you run ribbon through. Sometimes it's called ribbon slot, and then beautiful gathered French lace at the bottom. As you go on down the christening dress, you can see, it's made out of Swiss batiste, by the way, 100% cotton, but you can see the wonderful fancy band that is on this dress. Absolutely beautiful, made up of wonderful French laces, entredeux, all kinds of beautiful French elements, as you might call it. Now, speaking of elements, I'm going to share with you exactly what it is that is used to make up this beautiful sleeve. All right, the first thing we're going to have is French edging. Edging has one straight side, one scallop side. Then we have beading. This is the French lace that you run ribbon through. And then we have entredeux. It looks like a railroad track for ants with a seam allowance on both sides. And we're going to show you what you do with this entredeux to attach it. You do several things with it, actually. Now then, on one side of this entredeux, I'm going to trim it away, because I'm going to butt it up to some lace. So I'm going to trim away the seam allowance on one side of this entredeux, and then the other side I'm not going to trim. Now then, the French lace on the bottom, the edging. All right, you see I have the entredeux, the beading, the entredeux that is trimmed, and this side is trimmed, and I'll trim away the other side because in order to put lace to entredeux, I'll have to trim. So the other side will have to be trimmed too. Most of you already know this, but French laces have a gathering thread which is built right into the lace. French laces are cotton laces, and they have a gathering thread built right into the lace. So when you get ready to gather it, all you have to do is pull the gathering thread, and then we're going to attach this to the entredeux by butting them up together. Now, if you happen to have an edge joining foot, this is a great place to use it. If not, just use your shish kebab stick and hold it. Let me get my shish kebab stick here, and hold it as you zigzag it together, and then we'll put all of those elements together. I've got my sleeve ready. If you will look here, I have entredeux with the seam allowance. Then the beading has been butted together to the entredeux on one side, the trimmed. And here's the entredeux again. It was trimmed, butted together, and the gathered lace has been zigzagged to the entredeux. That is what makes the sleeve fancy band, and here is my gathered sleeve. So I will, just like you're putting a waistband on a skirt, I will come in here, pin this fancy band to the gathered fabric, and then my technique here will be stitch in the ditch, trim and zigzag. Let's say that again. Stitch in the ditch of the entredeux, stitch in the ditch, trim and zigzag. And I will just come over here and start this little bit of stitching in the ditch, and I am using the edge joining foot. Just a minute, let me move it over just a little bit. And I'm going to stitch in the ditch. I'm not going into the wing needle entredeux, I'm simply stitching in the ditch. And that edge joining foot, if you do have one for your sewing machine, makes it awfully easy to use. If not, just kind of watch where you're going, because you can certainly just see. You know, there was a long time ago, there was no such thing as edge joining feet. All right, now we're going to stitch in the ditch. And then I'm going to bring it over here. I will trim the seam allowance away down to, about a good 1/8 of an inch, and then I will go back and zigzag over that to finish it. I do not go into those holes of the entredeux at all, or you can use a serger to do all of that step. You can do all of it in one step if you have a serger. And now I have some wonderful hand embroidery for you. So pleased to have as my guest today Wendy Schoen. Wendy has published over 30 patterns under the name of Petite Pochet. She has authored 4 books on hand embroidery. She studied at the Royal School in London and in Madeira, Portugal. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. As always, it's great to be here. And today I want to show this very unusual stitch. This little flower right here is stitched in a way that you're probably not familiar with. It's called a cast-on stitch. And it's made very similarly to a bullion, except that instead of wrapping the needle, we're going to be casting on. So let me get started. I'm going to move this over. Let's hold on to that. Now, I like to work this stitch without an embroidery hoop, mainly because it gets very crowded with your fingers in the needle and the thread and all that, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm going to begin by just tying on in the middle with a little split stitch. And you don't need a knot, so I'm just going to make sure I don't have a knot. There we go. Bring the thread all the way down, and then pierce it so that it locks in the stitch. Now I'm working on a circle. The best way to do this is to focus on making a center of petals. We're going to work this in stages. So the first stage is a 3-petal series, and this is how we begin. I'm going to go all the way in and make sure it comes out at the exact same location. Now I'm going to be casting on to the needle with the thread. So I want to hold the needle in my right hand since I'm right-handed, and I'm going to cast on with my left hand. Now, if you know how to knit, this is going to seem familiar to you. When you take the thread, hold your palm side up. We need to twist the thread, and it's a little peculiar, so just watch what I'm doing. Hold your fingers up, palm side up. Take hold of the thread with your thumb and middle finger and extend your forefinger, and make sure you have enough slack in the thread that you can maneuver your hand. If you hold it too close, you can't twist. So at this point now, I'm going to turn my hand completely around, and now the top of my finger is showing. And then with my right hand, I'm going to take the tip of the needle over the first thread. So if you look at the way the needle is going into the stitch, you'll see that I'm just basically throwing the thread over the top of the needle. And oopsie, I lost it. There we go. So that's all there is to the stitch. Now I'm just going to go ahead and work as like I normally would, so you can kind of pay attention to how the thread is actually working. Some people have problems with this particular stitch, especially if their fingers are stiff and they can't quite get it to work. So you could always make a small loop with your finger and just place the loop over the tip of the needle. So it's exactly the same process, but it's done a different way. So however you can manage, and this is the other problem, you have to make sure you don't split your thread. And that's the other reason why I'm holding the tip of the needle so in my right hand, so the wraps don't come off. So I was saying you would go ahead and continue to wrap or cast on with the thread. Make sure to line up all your little pearls. These little stitches on the end are called pearls, and you want to continue to cast on until you have a sufficient number of wraps. Now, how many is sufficient? Usually what I like to do is I like to look at my the number of wraps, and normally when I'm not talking, I'm counting. So at this point I'm not really sure how many I've done, but it's about 15, so give or take. Now I want to make sure that I have more wraps or more cast-ons on the needle than the space that I have allowed for the 2 points that I've sewn into the fabric, so that I will get a looped effect. So now all I need to do at this point is take the wraps off of the needle. I want to make sure that I protect my wraps or my cast-ons. Hold on to them and take the end of the thread behind the tip of the needle and then pull it through. And I'm working this with heavy thread, so that's why it's a little bit harder to work with. But with regular sewing embroidery thread, stranded cotton, or floche, or anything like that, it will work perfect. Okay, now, so here's my loop, and I want to make sure that I tighten it up. And now I'm going to go down into the entry point to complete the stitch. I need to do 3 of these stitches. The next loop, or 3 of these petals. The next one begins inside the previous loop. Work it the same way. Remember to switch hands, cast on X number of times, and then move on. So I'll show you what the next step looks like. Now this is what the 3-loop series looks like. It's more like a Celtic knot where they're all interlocked. To make the next row, what I like to do is I like to switch colors at this point, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to use the same color. Come up on the outside of the center 3 loops. And this time we're going to make a longer stitch. So the stitch is now spread out, and we'll continue with the same number of wraps. So if we started with 15, we're going to continue with 15. And then at the end, or when all the loops are made, this is what the flower looks like. And it's very easy to tie off, Martha. All you need to do is bring the needle to the back and just slide it through the stitches on the back a few times, and that's pretty much it.
Now, how many little loops do you do?
It's up to you, depending on how big a flower you want to make. That's right.
Well, that is just fascinating, and that is the first time I've ever seen that stitch. So I'm so delighted that you brought that for me to see, and most importantly for our viewers to see.
Thank you, Martha.
Wendy, thank you so very much. And now I have a piece of antique clothing I would like to share with you. This dress I purchased at a flea market in London many years ago, and it's absolutely fabulous. It has the strips of puffing that go all the way up and down from the neckline all the way to the bottom of the skirt. You see it's just a front and kind of an A-line panel that comes down, and the beautiful puffing goes all the way down to the bottom, and at the very bottom there's one row of puffing that goes all the way around the dress. It also has the sweetest little sash ties you can even imagine, and not too many of my christening dresses have a little sash, so that also makes this little dress very, very special. Puffing and lace are two of my favorite things in the whole world as far as sewing is concerned. And I can still remember the day it was so cold. It was in December when I was at a flea market in London and purchased that. Thank you for coming to be with me in my sewing room today. I'd like to invite you back next time.